Hello, my fellow human light beings. This is Mahadeva the Thunder Wizard. This is the Solar Flash Update for June 9th of 2024. Solar Flash is revealing the extent of narcissistic abuse in our 3D world. Solar Flash is also revealing the extent of our codependent devaluation. We're going to talk about that. This is the Thunder Wizard YouTube channel. Welcome to it. This is the gathering place for all 5D starseeds and light workers. And my philosophy on life and my suggestion to all of you is to question your reality and then change it. That is what the Solar Flash is about. The Solar Flash is not about us being transformed by some outside force, which is part of it, don't get me wrong. But the point of this is that we question what we believe reality is, and then we change it. We've created this 3D reality, and we can create what we call 5D reality. We can create the new ascension, but we must make that choice. So what we're going to do today is we are going to look at how the Solar Flash energy is healing narcissistic devaluation. As you can see, I have a whole list of things so that I can stay on topic. But what I've come to find out is that the third dimension. Now, the great thing about what's been happening in my life over the past 2 years, this is the truth about reality. You can't know what you don't know. You only know what you know, and you can only function within what you know. So when you learn something new that you didn't know before, then you start to find out all of the things, you learn more about where you were. This has always been, whenever I've learned stuff, in my energetic martial arts practice, we had differing levels of physical sets, forms that we would do. And you would learn some in the first form, which, by the way, I teach here if you want to know about it. If you go to the shop here, thunderwizard.com, click on shop, and you scroll down and you see the Maoshan 5-element moving sets. See on the bottom left there, it goes wood, and then you have metal up to the right of that, and then fire and water, and then there's earth above that. Those are the 5 sets that I learned. I learned more than that, but you started with those 5. And the wood set teaches you the basics of how to tap into this heart-mind electromagnetic energy, life force energy, and chi. And so you learn the postures and the movements, and that releases all kinds of very powerful energy, which is associated with the ether element or the wood element, which is the expansive energy of life force energy. So it gives you the basics. Without that, you can't really, do any of the practices that are involved later. First thing you have to do is learn how to interact with life force energy. Now, you only learn, what you can learn. Here it is, the wood set here. You only learn what you can learn with that. But then once you get to some level of that, and you haven't mastered it, but you've gotten to a plateau and you can't seem to go further, well, then you go to the next set, which is the metal set. And then you learn some very different rules about how to function and how to move and how to stand and all that. And you learn more about energy. And then the interesting thing is when you go back to the wood set, you realize that your learning has leapfrogged, and now you know much more about the wood element or the ether element than you did before. And you realize you couldn't have learned that if you had just stayed trying to function within the wood element. You had to go beyond it, learn something new to come back to see all of the other things that you couldn't have seen if you'd stayed in one place. This is evolution. So that's what I've experienced over the past couple of years. I mean, 2 years ago, I even had felt it. I might have even said it. If I didn't say it on the channel, I definitely said it to, other people in my life, where I feel like I've come to, I don't know what's next. I can't see into the future. I feel like there's nothing more. I know that there's more to learn. I know I don't know everything, but I feel like I just don't know what's next. And sure enough, I did the human-initiated contact with higher dimensional extraterrestrials, also known as Close Encounters of the Fifth Kind Protocols, or CE5. And this is, on my channel, we call it interdimensional meditation. And I did that, and I ended up having to really break through my limited understanding, because I had a very, almost an armor of understanding that I had to break through. The truth is, the first 2 times I did CE5, ETs showed up. I couldn't see them and I couldn't hear them, but I recorded it on video and on audio. And when I look back on it, holy crap! And at one point, because I was using a radio, a ham radio, which is one of the tools that you use to let you know that an extraterrestrial phased out of 3D has shown up. They'll play around with your electronics to let you know that they're there. And that happened, so I knew that something was going on, and I said out loud, I said, "Are you here?" I heard nothing. But if you go and watch the video on my YouTube channel, if you go to the Alien playlist and you click on How I Became an Extraterrestrial, you'll see, and you'll see the video, and you'll hear the voice. And I said, "Are you here?" And the voice said, "Yes." I didn't hear it. I couldn't hear it. I didn't hear it telepathically, or I didn't hear it with my ears, but it was there. And so it took 3 times, and the third time, I'm grateful, a very powerful being showed up and literally just cracked my energy open, and I was a mess for the next couple of weeks, as you guys know, if you've been following the channel. But now I have a much different understanding of reality than I did before. And it's because I wasn't capable of knowing anymore. So this is what's happening with this solar flash event. This is a great picture. I love this picture. Because, it's a two-way thing. The person in this AI photo, or this AI picture here, he's getting hit with energy, but it also looks as though he's sending energy out. And is he creating that phenomenon, or is that phenomenon interacting with him? It's both. And so now I have a much deeper understanding of what reality is. And so until you know what you don't know, you can't know. And this is what the solar flash event is. It's about being able to know what you didn't know before, and then you have to make the choice to expand into it. That's the toughest part. Expanding into a reality you didn't know existed, because you're going to have to die to the understanding of reality that you have now. And that will be challenging. The solar flash event is not something that happens easy. It hits you, you're full of bliss, and everybody moves on. No, it's a challenging experience. We are experiencing this in the world. And so what I've learned is that 3D reality is held together by a frequency of self-devaluation. So let's talk about self-devaluation. I wouldn't have known this, by the way. I mean, I knew what devaluation was and all of that. I knew what narcissism was. I knew what codependence was. And so I knew the term self-devaluation, and I knew how that happens in dysfunctional relationships. But what I didn't realize is that the entire frequency of the third dimension is that frequency is self-devaluation. Now, that isn't necessarily a bad thing in and of itself. So let me give you a version of 3D that we could have created and probably existed at some point. But there's a version of three-dimensional reality that it wouldn't be as bad as the one we have now. And that would be the frequency of self-devaluation, which is, I'm this little being in this giant world, and I'm a victim of circumstances and energies. That's true. If it's a hot day, you're hot. If it's a cold day, you're cold. That's what I mean by that. So you're this being that's influenced by these outside influences. So the devaluation part is to go from who we truly are, which is outside of this third dimensional video game. We are omnipotent, infinite deities. We are the most powerful light beings in the universe, or among the most powerful, because you can't be allowed You won't have the ability to condense yourself into the very limited, challenging vibration of the third dimension if you're not incredibly strong. There are beings, this is what happens lots of times, by the way, when there's miscarriages. Miscarriages many times are beings who thought they could make it, and as they try and fit themselves into that, that third dimensional embryo, they begin to lose their connection to the bliss of higher dimensions, and it's so challenging that they abort. They say, "I'm not doing it." This happens a lot, by the way. A lot of the like I said, a lot of the stillborns, that's what's happening. They get it together, they go back up, they talk to their guides, they work it out, they scrunch up their energy, and they can come back and they can successfully do it. But that's how hard it is to be a third dimensional being. So devaluation, in that sense, being a small being who is influenced by other forces that seemingly are more powerful, that's technically devaluation, but that's not bad. And human beings were originally designed to go through an evolutionary process where they would learn to seek higher octaves within the third dimensional frequency, where they're technically devalued compared to who they were before they incarnated, but they're not filled with fear and anger, and they live in a place where they understand that we live in a world, a planet that is incredibly abundant. So here's a truth that we don't know right now, which is that the planet Earth is fully capable of providing all of the necessary resources for beings to function and be healthy. Far more people than are on the planet now. The planet, what you've been told is that there's too many people and overpopulation, the planet doesn't have the resources. That's complete nonsense. The planet has plenty of resources. I've lived in places. Right now I'm living in I'm not a super populated part of northern Florida by the ocean, and I'm surrounded by forest, very thick, intense rainforest with animals all over the place. There's no shortage of animal life and plant life. That means that the Earth is more than capable of providing all of the necessary resources. And you may not know it, but human beings, now way back, we talk about the Atlantean civilizations and all that. I absolutely believe, at the time when the pyramids were built, which if anybody looks at the actual geology of the pyramids, you're going to find out the pyramids are not 4,000 years old. They're more like 30,000 years old. So human beings have had access to technologies we don't, access to psychic technologies, sonic technologies, being able to use sound, being able to use intention, to do all kinds of things that we don't have access to now for all kinds of reasons, like we went through Kali Yuga, etc., etc. But one of the things that you may not know is that even in the last century, I'm so old that I was born in the previous century, but even in the beginning of the last century, there were scientists who were able to create zero-point technology, which means a box, no bigger than like a big matchbox, with components in it that are able to take infinite amounts of energy from the surrounding air. And just a box this big, it's been created and invented multiple times. A box this big had the ability to power an entire city. That means right now, a modern city, you could power every single building, every single home, air conditioning, electricity, heating, water pump. There was no limit to the amount of energy that this small box could create, and it wouldn't overheat and it wouldn't explode. And there's been numerous people. If you go watch the Why files, WHY, the Why files, they've got a video that, if you look at it, it's got proof in there. And these people, of course, end up magically dying, or putting a gun to the back of their head and killing themselves in strange ways. This has happened because, of course, there's no money in it. Now we get back to devaluation. So the reason why we live in a society where you are dependent upon the electric company, you are dependent upon the petroleum companies, you are dependent upon water company, you are dependent upon the banks, you are dependent upon all of these people to give you resources. And you don't even think about it. But the assumption is that without these companies giving you resources, you wouldn't have any. And that is a construct. It's a belief and a construct. And the whole idea of money is based on scarcity. I have one of the people that's in my group who used to be one of my clients. She knows who she is. He was an economist and said the whole science of economics is based on the assumption that there isn't enough resources for people. And other people have very wisely have described our modern society, politics, governments, banks, all of that is based on a Ponzi scheme, which is you start with scarcity. The people on the bottom don't have it. People on the top do. And the people on the top take the resources they don't have and give some to other people to make them feel like they've got some, so that it keeps the whole scam going. But eventually it ends up drying itself out until it collapses, which is what we're headed for. People keep talking about this economic collapse and all that. It doesn't mean the collapse of resources. There's no shortage of resources. There's no shortage of energy. There's no shortage of access to everything we need. Now, you're not allowed access to everything you need, because if you got direct access to everything you need, then the Ponzi scheme wouldn't work. This is where police come in, and armies and banks and the IRS. I'm just going through the nonsense of having to pay my taxes, which is, I don't even want to get into that. It's just so ridiculous, because I hate having to pay into the Ponzi scheme. So devaluation means that you don't deserve. It is an assumption a belief that you don't deserve to have access to everything you need, among other things. It also means you don't have any value. You don't have any inherent value. The only value you have, just like in a Ponzi scheme, just like in a multi-level marketing, just in a pyramid scheme, it's all the same thing. Your only value to the pyramid scheme is your ability to bring in new resources. And if you're able to bring in new resources and funnel from them up to the top, you get a kickback. So your only value to the scheme is what you can bring into it. Means you don't have it. You can't just show up and say, "Here I am." They'll go, "Where's your money? Where's your downline? Where's the pay-in?" You don't have any value in and of yourself. You have to bring something that's not you to this, and then you have value. And then if you have a bunch of people underneath you in the multi-level marketing, if you have a whole a downline of thousands of people, then you have value. But the people at the bottom have the least value, which is why they have to go out and get a bunch of prospects to come in, because without that, they can't feed into the Ponzi scheme. So it starts from an inaccurate assumption, which is that you don't have any value in and of yourself, which is another way of saying you don't deserve to live, which is another way of saying that you're not lovable, which is the opposite of the truth, which is that your value to the entire universe is the fact that you're conscious. And your conscious is unlimited and infinite. And so there is infinite value to you. That's why at the end of every video I say, please remember that you are the most important being that ever existed. Please remember that the entire universe was created for your pleasure. And that the only thing you're required to do is to experience and fulfill yourself. And that if it weren't for you, I wouldn't exist. That's all very true. And what I'm saying to you without saying it is that You have value simply because you exist. You have ultimate value, not just a little bit of value. You have ultimate value simply because you exist. And that is the truth that you're not being told. But the third dimension functions on the frequency of devaluation, because we're here to learn. And without that pressure of having to find your value, which is what 3D is all about, even in a perfect third dimensional existence, the third dimension is about finding your value within yourself. But when you're outside of the third dimension, you don't need to do that, because it is apparent to all creation that just your existence. Just like when we look at the stars don't need to do anything. They're just beautiful. We just stare at them and they just look at it, and the sun gives us life. If it weren't for the sun, we wouldn't have any life. What does the sun do? The sun just simply exists. The sun doesn't do anything other than just shine its light. It's just expressing itself completely without any hindrances, without any self-devaluation. If the sun had self-devaluation, the light would go out. So the sun, I know this, after the past 2.5 years, I have a personal relationship with our sun, and I can tell you that the sun is a conscious being that is so full of complete and total, unconditional, infinite love that it just shines out love in all directions, 24/7, 365, for billions of years, and she is filled with bliss doing it. It's a feminine being, by the way. She's a goddess. The rays of sun are masculine, the sun herself is feminine. And the creator goddess of the universe is actually a goddess of light. So I'm getting off topic here. So 3D reality is held together by a frequency of self-evaluation, and originally this isn't necessarily bad, except that the devaluation has been compounded. Now I'm here to tell you, again, I didn't read this in a book. This isn't coming from any religion. You can believe me or not believe me. You won't hurt my feelings. This is coming from my own personal interaction with higher dimensional beings who have shared this information with me, or, assuming that I'm interpreting it correctly, which, I'm not even attached to that. But if my interpretation is correct, here's how things really go in the universe. I forgot what I was saying. It had to do with the third dimension. We created the third dimension as an experiment because we wanted to grow. And, living in bliss was wonderful, but you don't grow when you don't have any challenges to overcome. So there are varying levels of realities that we've created, and we finally, we got together, those of us who were really ambitious, and you can believe me about this one or not, but apparently I was one of the people who said, we got to make this really tough. We've got to make it so tough that there's a real possibility for damage, that there's a real possibility that we could get lost and trapped, and that we could cause real damage. Because if that risk isn't there, we really won't dig deep enough to find out and learn and grow on the deepest level. And I said, for me, if we don't do that, this experiment isn't going to work. There were other beings and other councils and all that who disagreed, and some people agreed. And so people who had the same mindset as mine, we ended up winning that debate, and we decided to make Earth a very challenging place that had the potential for absolute unbelievable bliss and power and fun. But then again, that starts from the assumption that there is nothing but pure abundance, which again, in order to create 0-point technology, you have to start with the assumption that there's infinite amounts of energy just in this much, air, and that it's clean, and that it's completely renewable, and that you have to start with that assumption, otherwise you won't find it. So we knew that there was a possibility that if we came to this world and we were able to remember and wake up to that awareness, we would create the Disneyland of the universe, because it would be so fun and so amazing. So imagine a world where we never went through all of the nonsense we've gone through, which probably is what happened during, the early parts where, probably even tens of thousands of years before the pyramids were created, during, the Lemurian and the Atlantean civilizations, assuming those are real, which I think if those aren't real, they're symbols of civilizations that were. And what ended up happening is people ended up creating infinite amounts of power, and then people started turning it into a way to control and create and it wasn't equality. And so it ended up destroying itself. It was a Ponzi scheme that destroyed itself. And we had to start over again, and we went through and, but imagine if we created a world where human beings were able to allow themselves spiritually and technologically and philosophically to come to that conclusion and create 0-point energy and make it free for everybody. The only problem is when somebody creates it and says, I'm going to hold on to this and I'm going to make you pay for it. And I'm going to keep it a secret. And then you have to pay for it. You have to pay for the privilege or pay for the access or pay for something. And then you've got corruption. But imagine if it was free. And that was the hope. The light beings who created this 3D experiment was hoping that is what was going to happen. And it did. And the truth is that there is a very real danger, which is why 3D is coming to an end. And we are experiencing that. One of the reasons why ETs started showing up around World War II is very simple. Is because human beings invented nuclear bombs. Now, nuclear bombs operate from that same kind of understanding that just the tiniest little bit of energy and matter has tremendous power to it, but it's been used destructively. And when you use nuclear weapons, you not only destroy things in the third dimension, it's a multi-dimensional destruction. So these beings live in higher dimensions, and nuclear weapons are destroying the fabric of their reality as well. So that's why they all started showing up around World War II, because we were using our technology to destroy. But we were in the general area of understanding that there's an infinite amount of energy just in what you can see, right in an atom. But we were using it with the desire to destroy instead of with the desire to create, and with the desire to give freely to all. So, devaluation, 3D reality is held together by the frequency of self-devaluation, and unfortunately, if we had just stuck with the devaluation of I'm a tiny being in this wonderful, infinite, abundant universe, which would have been the appropriate and what we intended originally, which didn't happen. But unfortunately, that self-devaluation has been increased, and to the point where we now live in what I'm really calling self-devaluation. So narcissism is the defense of a devalued identity. So narcissism, especially narcissistic personality disorder, which is a very serious mental illness, is not what you think it is. People throw out the word narcissism and don't even know what it means most of the time. Narcissism is not somebody who's full of themselves and has a huge opinion of themselves. Narcissists actually are people who have been so devalued. They do not, within them, they have no sense of any value or any worth. They believe they deserve to be destroyed. They believe that they are the worst things that ever existed, and they are completely unlovable, and they absolutely detest and hate themselves, more than anything you can imagine. So in order to survive that, they create a false God identity. So the narcissist who presents themselves as I'm all-knowing, I'm all-powerful, I'm perfect, that is a facade. It's a fake facade character that they create as infants, because from an infant point of view, everything is God to them. So they're not. So they say, I'm just like all the adults. I'm God, because from their perspective, that's how infants view their parents. So they create this false identity of being perfect. They love themselves. They can do no wrong. They deserve to be worshipped, but that is a fake facade. The true reality is that they have zero value in and of themselves. And in fact, if they were to become conscious, this is the challenge that psychotherapy has with narcissists, because if a narcissist were even to begin to become aware of how much they hate themselves, it would kill them. Literally, the awareness and the pain could literally kill them on the spot. And I'll prove it to you. I've talked about this numerous times, but it's very important to the third dimension understanding and to the solar flash event. But this has been proven ever since the Middle Ages and probably before. And I'll give you the first known experiment that I'm aware of. There may be others, but the first known experiment that was done in the Middle Ages in England. I don't remember. I think it was might have been the 1600s or probably the 1400s, I think. But I don't know the exact date. And it was an English king, and of course he was a Christian. He was a Catholic, and back then, they believed that, because they believed in the Bible and born in 6 days, and Noah and Adam and Eve, and so they believed that Hebrew was the first language. And they went so far to presume that if human beings were left to themselves, they would begin speaking Hebrew. So this probably narcissistic king decided he was going to experiment to find out if this were true or not. So he put a bunch of orphans, infants, on an island with some nuns, some Catholic nuns. And he instructed the nuns to not have any influence on those children. So don't speak in front of them, because then they would learn, English. So you couldn't speak in front of the children, and you couldn't interact with them. So other than wiping their ass and changing their linen and keeping them warm and keeping them fed, other than that, the nuns were forbidden from having any interaction with the infants whatsoever. And what ended up happening is all of the infants died. They didn't die from lack of food. They didn't die from being too cold or too hot. They didn't die from living in their filth. They died from one thing and one thing only. They had zero physical and personal interaction with other humans, and it killed them. And the reason why it killed them is because you cannot live as a human without having an identity. And infants, when higher dimensional beings come into third dimensional reality as infants, they are a blank slate. And whatever identity they have comes from the people who literally look at them. So that's why you have to look at your child. Moms do this all the time. Moms, listen to me, you know what I'm talking about. You can't help but pick up your baby and look them in the eyes. In fact, you seek to look them in the eyes and have them look you in the eyes. And then what's happening in that moment is that blank slate is being given an identity, because they're in a quantum liminal state. And if you know anything about quantum states, by the way, there's a really great series on Apple TV right now called Dark Matter. So go watch that, because it talks about that. But the experiment of light, is light a particle or a wave? When you find out, well, light is a quantum liminal state that is completely dependent upon the projection of somebody looking at it. So when you look at light with the intention of seeing it as a particle, it says, oh, I'm a particle, and it becomes a particle. If you look at it and you say, I want to see if it's a wave, it goes, oh, you want me to be a wave? I'll go back in time and turn myself into a wave, and then you'll be able to look. It literally goes back in time and recreates itself for you. And infants are exactly that way. They come in here with zero identity. They don't know the first thing about who they are. They don't even know anything about consciousness or existence. They're a complete blank slate. And if you don't look at them with an expectation, they won't become anything. And it will kill them. So this is why babies need you to look at them. Because you can't look at them without having a feeling. Now, even if you look at an infant and you project all kinds of negative things onto it, which of course will be damaging and painful, it will create an identity from that and it will survive, which is why narcissists and borderlines and other really damaged people survive, because people did look at them and gave them an identity, even if it was a negative one. But when you don't give the infant anything, it ceases to exist, because it cannot function in the third dimension without an identity. So devaluation is the act of taking that away, of telling you you don't have any value. Even if you look at an infant with a negative projection, you're still saying you have a value. It's a negative value, and you give and take, and and this is what happens with destructive parents. You'll never be anything. When I was your age, there's an energy exchange and there's a value. The parent gets off on devaluing and abusing you, and so you go, oh, my worth is to be a piece of crap, make them feel better. And we get into the codependence. That's what codependence is. So have I made myself clear? So, narcissism is the defense of a devalued identity. Narcissism is not somebody who is full of themselves. It is somebody who hates themselves so much that if they were even to begin to feel how much they hate themselves, that feeling would literally kill them. So a narcissist is somebody who got just enough attention as an infant that they were able to cobble together this facade of an identity, which is a fake facade. So they barely escaped dying from lack of attention and lack of love. That's why they're so destructive. And that's why they deserve the deepest understanding and compassion. Because it doesn't mean you have to hang out with them, because they're extremely destructive in their unhealed state. But now you know why they're so destructive and why they insist on saying they're the most valuable person in the room, because the opposite is true in their own minds. Codependence is the attempt to cooperate with the devaluer. I talked about that already a little bit. So when you're being devalued by a narcissist, the way that you survive that is by cooperating with that. And so you accept that your role is that your value in existence is only what you can do for the narcissist. How you look, how much money you have, what you do. In the Ponzi scheme, it's how much non-existent resources you bring in to keep the Ponzi scheme going. Which is, by the way, society. I know, I just paid taxes. The thing about the IRS is that, it doesn't matter if you lose all of your money, you still have to pay taxes. It doesn't matter. I've been through bankruptcy before. I've been considering it lately, but I've been through bankruptcy before, and I was shocked to find out that I could write off and walk away from all of my credit card debt and all of my car payment debt, but I still had to pay taxes. I'm like, I don't understand. What do you mean I have to pay taxes? I just got through saying I can't pay back any of these loans, and now I got to pay money to the government? I don't have it. And I was actually paying the government until recently. I was paying the government in small payments for years from that when I went through bankruptcy. It's crazy. That's the lunacy of the Ponzi scheme. Anyway, we're getting off topic here. So the codependence is the attempt to cooperate with the devaluer. So a codependent person is somebody who has an identity. It's not the true identity of I exist and my value is simply because I exist. Because that's a fully individuated person. Somebody who says, I have value. By the way, a fully individuated person will also be the most humble person, but will also be the first person to say, I'm not going to put up with that. and will also be the first person to tell you how amazing and wonderful you are. So that's fully individuated. So a codependent person is not individuated, but they have enough of an identity where they say, well, my value comes from what I do for other people. Here's somebody that's only going to demand from me. So this is the codependent's dream. This is why codependents are all, this is why people on YouTube, the super empaths, are constantly talking about how they're getting away from the narcissist, and they want to talk about narcissists 24/7 and how the narcissist does this and how the narcissist does that. It's because they get their value from narcissists. It's why they can't stop talking about them. It's why they can't get away from them. Because if they're put in a position where they actually start to have self-value, it's incredibly traumatizing, because they have to then accept the fact that these abusive people will never love them. Their parents will never love them. Their partners will never love them, etc., etc. And they can only find love within themselves. And that's why God is within. Unlike the narcissist who says they found love within themselves, which is a complete lie. The self-individuated person says, I love people, but I don't need them to be okay. Unlike the one type of the codependent that says, I don't need anybody, I don't want anybody in my life. That's different. They're afraid of being devalued and rejected, so they tell themselves they don't need anybody, but it's not because they don't desperately want people in their lives. Individuated person is somebody who can be with people or not be with people. And no matter how badly they're devalued, they know that they have value in and of themselves. The codependent doesn't know that. The codependent functions based on whether or not they're given praise for what they do. Even if that's, they get their value from being a source and being abused and devalued by somebody else, at least they're not alone, and at least they have some value. So the 5D is the inverse of the devaluation frequency, and this is what I didn't know. So I said, you can only know what you know. And now I know. And one of the things that is happening, that has happened and is happening right now, is now I know a lot more about devaluation. And there's a lot of interactions and connections that I've had, which I'm beginning to get rid of, because I'm realizing that, it was good up until this point, but once you get to the inverse of devaluation, you come to realize everything is based on devaluation, even the so-called good relationships. Or at least not all of them, but at least some of them you thought were good relationships, you find out, oh, there's a devaluation here, and I don't want to be devalued anymore. So I'm going to move beyond that. And that's very challenging. Anyway, I'm getting off topic here. So 5D is the inverse of the devaluation frequency. So one of the things that I've learned from light beings, which I'm working, I haven't perfected it yet, I'm working on it, and hopefully I'll get to this place, but I used to do a lot of criticizing. And I'm great at it. As a teacher, I'm great. If you come at me, I'll point out your faults and I'll show you what's wrong, and then I'll give you a path to grow and to heal. But a lot of people can't handle being told, where their deficiencies lie, and that's just, I'm one of those teachers. I tell you the truth whether you want to hear it or not. I love you so much, I'll tell you the truth even if you don't like it. But ETs have never done that with me. Never once have they criticized me. There have been times when they've given me suggestions. The one time they said, they suggested that I be more compassionate and tolerant. And that was it. They left it at that. I was ready to hear it, though. The only other time that a light being was what I felt was directly harsh with me was when I was being told, along the lines of what I'm talking about, I was being told that I was this amazing deity, blah 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 blah. This absolutely unbelievably unrealistic, grandiose. And it wasn't like they were criticizing me or anything. In fact, quite the opposite. They were heaping love and compliments and praise upon me, basically worshiping me for the fact that I existed, and I couldn't tolerate it. It was so traumatizing, because it's so the opposite of everything I've experienced in the third dimension. And so I was really struggling with it, and this light being came, sitting in that couch, came right in through that corner there. I didn't see it, I felt it. He came in and he said, in the harshest tone I've ever heard from an ET, he says, You have to believe what we're telling you about yourself. It's incredibly important that you believe us. And what he was telling me was to believe that I was more than just valuable, that the entire universe depended upon my existence. You know, for somebody in the third dimension to be told that is traumatizing. You can hear it. If I write it down and I give it to you, you'll think, oh, that's beautiful. But it's one thing to see it and hear it, and it's another thing to feel it. When a being is giving this to you in a way where you feel it in a level that takes you out of anything you've ever understood, it's incredibly traumatizing. And the reason why it's traumatizing is because it destroys your existence in the third dimension. And that's where I realized the third dimension is a frequency of self-devaluation, which is why everybody's resisting this higher dimensional energy. This is why every time we have a solar storm and it hits, people go through anxiety, people flip out, people start wars. You know, there were murders that took place when we had some of these big solar events. People were going out with knives, and I was in Australia. People don't have as many guns over there. And people were showing up in malls and stabbing people to death, just mass murders. People who had serious emotional mental illness, meaning they were extremely devalued. So somebody who thrives on being devalued, being told that they are the most beautiful, loved thing in the world, and that they don't need to do anything to be loved, that's actually traumatizing, because it destroys the entire fabric of what's holding their reality together. So 5D is the inverse of the devaluation frequency. So if you want to get to 5D, the first thing you're going to have to need to do is love yourself on the deepest level. And I don't mean it in the new age sense of let's go to the talk about super empath heyokas. I don't mean it in the even in the love and light sense of that. I don't even mean it in the psychotherapeutic view of it. All of that to me is in the level of 3D self-devaluation. You're going to have to accept and expand into your divine identity. And you're going to have to do it quick. It's going to be challenging, and you will feel like it's killing you. And ironically, when you're being loved, truly seen, depending on the level of devaluation you have, that's how much trauma it will be. Little kids are going to have a great time with it, because little kids want that. That's why little kids fantasize about being superheroes, and they fantasize about elves and fairies, and they talk to elves and fairies, and they see, they believe in unicorns, and because they're already still in that, there's enough of their connection to their pre-birth state where they can expand into it. So little kids are, as long as they're not too damaged, they're going to be, and even if they are, little kids can, expand, and they're very flexible. They'll be able to shift into it. It's the adults, especially after age 7, you're no longer able to be programmed. You're programming, your mind is in a state of being hypnotized up until age 7. And then after age 7, whatever programming is locked in. And it's even true up to the first 2.5 years, 2-3 years, your programming gets locked in after that. So little kids will be fine, they'll be able to expand into it, but adults are going to have the hardest time. Especially adults who are really, really locked into their thinking and really, really locked into their identity, whatever it is. And if they associate their existence, their survival with their identity, it's going to be traumatizing. So I'm not telling you this to make you feel bad or to frighten you, but that when you get hit with this energy, and you get hit with anxiety and fear and anger and self-hatred and criticism, and you want to lash out and go to malls and stab everybody, if all that stuff goes through you, it just means that your identity is being dismantled. And that's a good thing. But you have to allow yourself to be loved. Now, if you allow yourself to be loved, what's going to happen is you're going to do a lot of crying. Because in order to be loved, you're going to have to live through all of the rejection and the devaluation that you've experienced from the people you still want to love you. This is, I've seen this from my observation. I want to get into details, but I can't. But I can tell you from my observation, the people who are still unconsciously seeking the love of their parents are the most miserable, the most physically ill, and the most miserable people in the world. The people who are seeking to find the love within themselves. It doesn't matter how badly you've been damaged. If you have that focus and you're willing to continue to self-examine and go through the pain of working past the rejection and the devaluation and crying over that, you can heal. But you have to allow yourself to be loved. Now, I'm saying this. Now, there are people I know who are able to go to that place where they do the self-evaluation and they get in this cycle, especially, I won't get into specifics, but, there are plenty of people who can continue to bring up and, all of the pain and cry through it, but they don't actually move beyond it. They believe they're experiencing some kind of psychological healing because they're in touch with a lot of emotions. I know, I used to be an actor. Actors are known for this. And I acted for years for that very reason. I needed to take the lid off and I would release my emotions and then I'd put my lid back on and I could go back into society. I needed it to survive. But it didn't mean I was healing. So interacting with the fifth dimension, you will heal from that and learn how to live and be in a state of truly being loved, truly being seen, truly being accepted. I'm in a state now that is very strange and interesting. If I were to describe it to my younger self would say, well, it kind of sounds like you're deluded and you're escaping reality. But I'm in this scenario now where I'm in continuous interaction on some level, at the very least on an energetic level, with beings who are not in this dimension, who love me completely and totally, and all they want to do is love me. In fact, they say all we want to do is love you. All we want to do is help you. And and they come to me all the time when things are difficult. I can feel their energy, and when I go into meditation, I interact with them, I talk with them, I communicate with them. I've got relationships with multiple of them, and on an astral level. And I mean, even though I don't have a lot of people in my life, I feel like I'm surrounded by love and by, I've got this huge community around me. So I don't know what that has to do with anything other than I'm saying that I have a level of feeling loved that I've never had. And it's because of one thing and one thing only. I'm interacting with the fifth dimension, which is why I say 5D is the inverse of the devaluation frequency. I don't need anybody else's approval. I don't need anybody else's anything. Now, I'm not against it. I welcome all kinds of interaction, positive interaction, but I don't need it. And in the third dimension, you need that. Which again, the third dimension says not only do you not have value within yourself, you need to get value from outside of yourself, but you don't have access to the resources. This is the fundamental lie that you're told by economics. Whenever you hear the economy this, the economy that, the economy is an idea, it doesn't exist. The truth is that Mother Earth has infinite amounts of energy and infinite amounts of resources for everybody. And there's no shortage. There's no shortage of air. There's no shortage of plants. There's no shortage of water. You might pollute it and destroy it and do whatever, but the Earth has this amazing way of regenerating. And there's, we talk about overfishing and all that, but if we didn't do things for profit, like we didn't fish for profit, if we didn't farm for profit, if we all had 0-point energy and we could, power our houses and power entire cities from just something the size of a matchbox, we wouldn't have to worry about, there's not enough electricity in the grid and there's not enough, oil in the ground. We wouldn't have to worry about any of that because and the only reason all that stuff exists is because we start from the assumption that there isn't enough. And it's a lie. And the people who own all of those things, the petroleum companies, the electric companies, the banks, all the people who own all the stuff that you have to buy things in order to survive. They already know that there's plenty of everything for everybody, and they have to keep lying to you that there isn't enough. So solar flash energy is revealing personal and global narcissism and devaluation. So this is what's happening. So I'm going to be straight and honest with you. I was told about the solar flash by higher dimensional beings 2 years ago. You know the story. I'll briefly go over it. I'd never heard of the solar flash event, and I had a dream. It was more like a vision. It was a real, it was the most real dream I ever had, and I saw that there was going to be an ascension event that was going to happen, seemingly, at least in the dream, an instantaneous event that would be worldwide, that people would think God was coming and they would find out it was something more than that. The dream ended, and I knew it had to do with everything shifting up. And I went to the ETs in meditation and I said, what is this event going to be? Because the only thing I could imagine is that fleets of spaceships were going to surround the earth and people were going to, oh my God, look at all those extraterrestrials. Oh my God, they're light beings. Oh my God. And then they would all awaken. That's what I thought. And I said, so what is it going to be? Is it going to be a bunch of fleets of spaceships? What is this event going to be? And they said, no. It's going to be a series of solar waves of love that will penetrate the earth and shift all consciousness up to the next level. And I went, solar waves of love? And I even said it on the channel, this sounds like nonsense. I think I'm making this up. And somebody said, no, that's a real thing. It's called the solar flash event. It's called the event. Check it out. Sure enough, it's been talked about for a couple of decades at least. And so, I thought it was going to happen. And I started, saying it's going to happen 2 weeks from now. It's going to happen next month. And I was even telling people, I might disappear, because this is, just be aware that things are going to happen. And if you don't hear from me in a month, it means that I shifted up to another level. I thought it was going to happen, and all kinds of things happened. And I was taken to the 5D frequency 2 different times, and I was just not in this 3D realm at all. And I really thought we were going to shift up. Well, that hasn't happened yet. The one thing that did happen, which they said was going to happen, which was that there was going to be a series of solar events that were going to shift the world up. Now, remember what I've been saying about how traumatizing it is to be truly loved. So they said that the solar wave events are going to be waves of love. So what's been happening every time that we have solar events? What's been happening is that there are wars and people flipping out and all kinds of political problems and personally people having all kinds of physical issues. And I've seen it, people completely losing their minds and flipping out. And again, what is this? This is the 3D self-devaluation reacting to actually being seen and being loved. Remember, it is traumatic for those who are devalued. So this event is a traumatic event for the average 3-dimensional human. So it's important to know that, because when you feel this, you relax into it and then you seek to be loved. This is why I think interdimensional meditation is so important. This is why whenever we do these live guided interdimensional meditations, at least once or twice, I have you ask the beings to look at you, because again, you're a liminal, in a quantum state, and if somebody sees you with an expectation and you receive it, you will shift up to that. You will become that. So I tell you to have them look at you and tell you who they see you as, and then I tell you to repeat back to them what you heard, because when you repeat back to them, you then accept that. You can shift up to it. If you don't repeat back to them, there's a greater chance of you denying it and pushing it away, which will, So the solar flash energy is revealing personal and global narcissism and devaluation, because it is pure loving energy. And so we're seeing this, and we're hearing about and all of the lies. It's starting to come out. We're starting to find out that the was ineffective and that it didn't prevent the thing, and all of these things that were absolute anathema that you could get completely, totally, put in jail for saying just 3 years ago. So that is coming to light. There's been hints that other things, other other institutionalized, really destructive things being done to innocent people, which I won't talk about, has been come to life, but that's been suppressed. But that's going to come back out again. The things that are going on in the Middle East, I mean, the unbelievable amounts, I mean, I've never seen anything like it in my life. I've never seen in my life the level of, trying to destroy an entire race of people. I've never seen that in my entire life to this extent, and it's plastered all over, and people are actually fighting over it like there's something to fight about. It's all the stuff that we're beginning to see. You can't deny it anymore, and people are waking up. People are coming to me who aren't into spirituality, haven't been into any of this, and they've said, "You're the only person that's made sense to me," because they can sense that things are changing and their understanding of reality is coming apart. And it's not because they talk to ETs or anything like that. It's just things are just starting to happen within them, and their understanding is coming apart. And I've seen people who my understanding of who was spiritual and who isn't is completely getting dumped on its head. There are people who I thought were the most screwed up people I've ever seen that, now that they're getting hit with this energy, they're coming around and they're transforming in ways that were completely humanly impossible. There's no way. There's a few people that I know, and I'm sure there's plenty that I don't know, that have evolved in ways that would have been impossible for one person to do in one lifetime. There's just no way. It's just absolutely unbelievable. I mean, I felt it in my own body. I felt the changes in my own body. I mean, as I'm getting older, I'm getting younger for the weirdest reasons. Things that are just impossible. And then there are people who I thought were super, super evolved. And what I'm realizing is, oh my God, a lot of that was a facade. They aren't as evolved as I thought they were. And they're responding and they're regressing in ways, oh my God. People who I thought knew what was going on are starting to turn in the other direction. And all levels in between. It's a spectrum. It isn't one or the other. But what we're seeing with this is that this solar energy is hitting, and you're starting to see the truth. The facades are peeling away. And it's just the beginning. We're not done yet. Until now, most 3D spiritual and cultural norms have been higher octaves of devaluation. I've been touching on this, but, religions. There are some religions that are obviously, like born-again Christianity. For me, all of the Abrahamic religions are extremely devaluing and destructive. But, there are things in it, 100 years ago, if you talked about the love of Jesus, in fact, somebody on the channel reminded me, because I said, why did Yogananda, why did he talk about Jesus in that way? The true message of Jesus. And I'm like, there was no true message of Jesus. There was that message in the Bible, and it's a really screwed up one. And it's, and somebody brought to my attention, he said, well, he said later he had to do that because he wouldn't have been able to interact with a Western audience because they were so focused on Jesus. So you could talk about Jesus' love and forgiveness, and you could find the things and focus on that, and you could create a functional spiritual path that would help you evolve, but it would only get you so far. But as long as you're in the third dimension, it could take you to the heights of awareness and spirituality. But that stuff isn't working anymore. We're starting to find out, there are understandings about the Vedic myths. The truth about the Vedic myths is if you go deep enough in them, they're saying the exact same things I'm saying. But it takes a lot of, you got to really dig deep, and you have to look past some of the superficial religious aspects of some of the, by the way, the Hinduism isn't a religion, it's a combination of different religions. Even those are getting turned on their head. People's understanding. I mean, if I were to say for instance, if I were to go to the average worshiper of Krishna, and if I were to say that I'm more powerful than Krishna, that would be blasphemy. If I were to say I'm more powerful than Kali, I'm more powerful than Shiva, that would have been blasphemy. It still would be blasphemy to most, if not all, of the people who worship those beings. But I can look you in the face and I can tell you that. How do I know that? Because those beings have told me that in higher dimensions. And I can say that without any grandiosity or any ego, because I have a completely different understanding of consciousness and all of that, and who the deities are and who we are. And this is why I can say to you, to your face, if you were standing in front of me or if you're listening to me and looking at me, I can look you in the face and I can tell you you're the most powerful being in the universe and that you created me and that I can't exist without you. And I'm not saying that in a symbolic way. I absolutely mean it. I mean it as much as I've ever meant anything. And I can say in the same breath that I'm God and I'm more powerful than Shiva. So how does that work? Well, it's a completely different understanding of reality, which is the 5D flips everything on its head. And, it's okay with me if that confuses you. I'm still expanding into it, but, and I know a lot of people accept it symbolically because it's thrown around in spiritual circles in a symbolic way, but nobody really, really believes it or accepts it. I can tell you, this is absolutely the truth. And it's, anyway, you'll find out, to your own extent. So until now, most 3D spiritual and cultural norms have been higher octaves of devaluation. 5D solar energy is introducing a complete destruction of all devaluing influences. Before 5D Earth split occurs, there will be more revelations of the dark force agenda. So what hasn't come yet, and I don't know when it's going to come, I'm very anxious and impatient for it to come now. But I also know that people are going to need to awaken at the level that they can handle. And I don't know exactly what that's going to be. I want it to be more. But what did I just say? Before 5D split occurs, there will be more revelations of the dark force agenda. So there's going to be more revelations. And so there's, I don't know how long this solar flash event is going to last, or if it's going to either have to go on for a while longer, or the intensity is going to have to get switched up, or some combination of those two. I could be wrong, but that's how I see it. Because so far, the level of awareness is still far less than what is necessary. And there's been a lot of people who have said this, and I say this. Where is the outrage? Where is the outrage among every single person who got the and still doesn't have a huge reaction when they say that wasn't effective and that causes injuries and that is causing deaths, and that they got that for absolutely no reason. It did nothing for them. In fact, it might have even harmed them. More and more people, the mainstream media, the Wall Street Journal, CNN, MSNBC, the three-lettered organizations that are supposed to take care of our health, they are all starting to reveal the truth. Dr. Fauci is being grilled and the truth is starting to come out. And I don't understand where the outrage is. I don't understand the people who believed what they were told, who believed the lies, and now see that it's not true. I don't understand why they aren't completely, totally flipping out. Why there aren't just massive demonstrations on the White House lawn. I don't understand, where's the outrage? So there's obviously still a lot of denial that's going on, a lot of suppression. So a lot of that's going to have to change. So that means there's going to have to be more awakening, which I think the level of solar radiation is going to have to, there's going to have to be a bigger dose or more of it or more prolonged exposure or something. So, but that has to happen before the shift occurs. I know that I don't think I'm ready. I believe that the 5D Earth already exists at a higher frequency, and if I could snap my fingers and make myself go there, I would. Part of me doesn't want to go there because I feel like I have a role in helping people awaken, so part of me wants to stay and do that, but I would at least like to know that I could. I'd like to close my eyes, shift there, and come back, and I haven't been able to do that. So at the very least, it means that I'm not ready. So I'm going to need more exposure to these solar waves before I'm able to shift up. And I don't need to be more or less spiritual than anybody else. If other people are able to shift up before me, it won't hurt my feelings. I hope that I get to do that. I hope I get that ability, and I can't see any reason why I wouldn't. But anyway. So before 5D Earth split occurs, there will be more revelations of the Dark Force agenda. Each individual will experience increased opportunities to personally and culturally heal. One of the things I'm really looking forward to is, getting rid of all of the cultural separations. That doesn't mean that I want there to be no culture. It's not what I mean. I think culture, that culture should be celebrated, and different cultures should be celebrated, and all of that. So I'm absolutely, I love the idea of different cultures and different understandings and different practices and different beliefs and different things. Of course, they all merge together in their own way, but I can't wait to get over the idea of separation that we have. Countries, boundaries. Not, as I'm saying now, there's a border crisis going on, and that has nothing to do with countries. That has everything to do with corporations trying to, in the United States, the border crisis is about getting rid of citizens who believe that they have the right to self-determination. All of the people that are being brought in here are people that are being brought in by corporate interests who want to erode people's willingness to determine their own reality. So, they want people who will be told, who will do whatever they're told and will vote however way that they're willing to vote, that they're told to vote. People are being brought in here and being bribed with, if you join the army, we'll give you citizenship. So they're trying to replace this country, and it's happening in Europe and other places too. It has nothing to do with other cultures or other languages or other ethnicities. It has everything to do with different mindsets about freedom. And what is happening is this border crisis is about an erosion of self-determination and freedom. I want to see the fake boundaries removed. I want to see more freedom. People more free to be who they are and who they want to be. Each individual will experience increased opportunities to personally and culturally heal. Each human is responsible for their own evolution and frequency. And so again, even though we're getting hit from external energy that's hitting us, we are responsible for how we shift into it. Now, if I take it to another level, Again, I'm not attached to any of this. I don't need for any of it to be true. If it turns out I'm wrong, I will be the first person to gladly voice it. But my understanding is that my role in all of this is to do these live-guided interdimensional meditations where we humans go out and we do this intentions and we do these chantings and we send the energy to Earth. So we're the ones that are actually creating the solar flash. We are cooperating with the sun and the universe and the multiverse and all of the beings and the central sun, and we're cooperating with all of that, but we're the ones that are, fundamental to organizing and orchestrating this. So not only, this is why I think everybody should be doing these live-guided interdimensional meditations, because then you're not waiting around for something to happen. You're taking a responsibility and you're making it happen. So when we do these meditations and the next day I start coming apart, at least I know I did it. It's like, well, no wonder I'm so full of anxiety and fear. I just released a ton of solar radiation on myself. So my physical human body's having my 3D psyche's having a hard time, but at least I know where it came from. So the more that you can take a responsibility and direct action in creating these events, the easier it's going to be when the challenging energy hits you, because at least you'll know where it came from. As opposed to waiting for it to happen, which is what a lot of people are doing. There's a lot of people on social media talking about all kinds of things, and I can tell by listening to them that they're not aware that their uncomfortable feelings are actually shifting them out of their narcissistic devaluation, which they've conflated with being a super empath or a heyoka or a chosen one or whatever, which is really a conflation of their devaluation mentality. They don't understand that. There's going to be no shortage of people in 2D who, by the way, are going to be talking about these things still. They're still going to be talking about it. Each human is responsible for their own evolution and frequency. A new collective consensus of reality is needed before humans shift to 5D frequency. So I've created this live Zoom class and discussion group with me, which anybody is welcome to if they're doing these meditations and they're having experiences. That's the only requirement I have, is that you're doing these meditations and you are at least wondering if you're having an experience. You don't have to know if you are, just wondering if you're having experiences, you're welcome. Go to thunderwizard.com and subscribe, and you can be part of those. Now, once the group gets to a certain level, I'm going to cap it once I decide what that is, and then maybe I'll create another one, because we need to have not too many people. But what we're doing in these live discussions is we're creating a new consensus, and that was my goal. I didn't know if it was going to happen. I didn't know what was going to come out, but I wanted to, on a selfish level, I wanted to hear what other people's personal experiences were, especially like when you ask these light beings to show you who you are. What are you hearing? What are they telling you? What is your strength? You know, I know what they're telling me I am, and I know what they've told other people they are, and it's not the same. The first time I was doing this, and this being came to me and started telling me things like, you're Shiva, you're the god of this, you're the creator of the blah blah, I thought that everybody who's interacting with these beings are being told the same thing. Generally speaking, people are being told similar things to what I just said. I'm avoiding what they told me. I still haven't told the world yet what they told me, because if what they said is true, the world's going to find out. So I don't have to, and I'm not interested in creating any distraction or creating any kind of It's not about me. It's not about me or my reputation. But what I'm interested is to hear what they're telling other people. And I'm hearing people are being told very specific things, very grandiose things about their job in maintaining and creating the universe, and their job with human beings and with consciousness and with all that. And everybody's got a different role. It's all as grandiose. It's all as big as being told you're Shiva, you're the creator of the universe. They're all being told things on that level, but they have specific jobs and functions that are separate from each other, which is amazing to me. Because if this was, just mass delusion, everybody would be having the same delusion. But to have such specific delusions that everybody's trying to get their head around, because everybody's in the same place of, they're trying to expand into it, and they're really having a hard time accepting this, which again is not what happens with people who are deluded. People who are narcissists and who are deluded are very attached to their delusions and are very defensive of them. The people who are experiencing this are going, I think I'm making this up. I just can't see, am I crazy? I think I'm kind of crazy. Crazy people don't say that. Crazy people say, I'm not crazy, you're the crazy one. So, let's see, what was I looking at here? So, a new collective consensus of reality. So the consensus of reality that we've had up until this point is the three-dimensional self-devaluation. God is up in heaven. He created you. You are a worthless piece of crap. You deserve to be thrown in hell, or you need to worship the gods, or the gods are angry with you. You'll get thrown into the underworld. This is all the consensus that we've had. We live in a universe. It's an arbitrary, frightening universe. There are limited resources. All of that. You have to get God to love you. You don't deserve to be loved until you live a righteous life, until you're a good person, until you're smart, until you're rich. Whether it's spiritual or physical, it all comes down to you're not enough and you got to earn it. And that's the consensus, which is why, by the way, I've talked to people about, it's been that 0 point energy has been invented numerous times, and each one of those people that invents it ends up disappearing or dying, and some government element comes in and steals the technology, and we never see it again. And it's amazing to me how many people just refuse to believe that. The level of denial is just amazing. And it's because if they accept that, their consensus of society, forget about reality, their consensus of society will come apart if they believe that. If they believe that consensus of society, that there are people out there who have the ability to give you free energy and access to infinite resources, and you never have to pay for anything ever again in order to live and survive and have what you want, that there's interests that are keeping that knowledge from you. There are people that just refuse to believe that. It's just like, that doesn't make. I was one of those people. If you had told me that 3 years ago, I would have said, more like 4 years ago, I would have completely said, get out of here. That's ridiculous. That's a conspiracy theory, I would have said. Now I don't use that phrase anymore. The consensus we now have to create is one where we are infinite beings of light, where there is infinite resources, there is infinite love, and that your value is based only on the fact that you exist. And the only thing that you need to do is experience more and more of your own existence, and to make the priority in your life your greatest bliss and your greatest happiness. Because if you do that, I will be happy as well. Unlike now, where if you seek out your greatest happiness, I know because I've experienced this ever since I've been teaching it, people will come at you and call you selfish and say, how dare you? You have to sacrifice for other people. You have to be a martyr. You have to be a hero. You have to save other people. You can't just focus on yourself. What the hell's wrong with you? Who do you think you are? And I've come to find out that even though the kindest thing I can do for everybody in the universe is to focus on my own happiness, there are people who will get real upset about that, and they'll fight me about it. And that's a consensus belief, that your only value is what you do for the whole. And we don't need any of that. None of us need to do that. The only thing that we're required to do is to make ourselves blissfully happy. And if we follow what our souls tell us, not our minds, not our bodies. I'm not talking about, sticking heroin in your neck and saying I'm going after my bliss, or I'm doing whatever with people in society I'm not supposed to be doing, or abusing people and I get off on that. That's not bliss. That is distraction. You're distracting yourself. Well, what if my bliss is if I watch porn all day, 24? No, that's not happiness, that's distraction. Your soul will have something that it wants that will be so empowering and blissful for you, but is also empowering and blissful for others. You want to be a ballerina. Well, that might give you the greatest bliss in your life, but your family says, no, you have to be part of our carpeting business. You have to be part of our farm business. You have to be part of, our whatever. I mean, this happens all the time. People have dreams from their soul and they throw them away so that they can do what their parents or what their family or what their spouse tells them to do. And they think, because I don't want to be too selfish. But that's not how the world works. The more selfish you are based on your soul, the more you help others, whether they like it or not. And if they learn from your example of, screw this, I'm going to stop trying to be what other people want me to be. I'm going to stop trying to amass wealth. I'm going to stop trying to amass control, popularity. I'm just going to go after what makes me happy. Imagine if the whole world did that. Because when you're in that state, you don't have a problem giving to anybody. You're the most generous and you're the most loving when you're happy. And nobody's requiring it of you, so you give it to people. It's a free gift. As long as people are requiring it of you, that's, again, we got codependent. Codependent people do that all the time. They only give if they're going to get something out of it. Narcissists only give if they're going to get something out of it. But an individuated person gives just because it feels good. I got plenty. I don't need to worry about it. There's plenty more where that came from. Got me? Okay, so we're done. Anyway, if you're new to the channel, of course, the way to support the channel is to subscribe, like, comment, hit the bell button. Do the live interdimensional meditations as often as possible. Follow and like the Path of the Thunder Wizard on Facebook. Share Thunder Wizard YouTube video links and Facebook posts on social media. Subscribe to the thunderwizard.com Patreon site, especially, not just the free, because that doesn't do anything for, the channel or for you. And browse the thunderwizard.com shop for all of the advanced practices. Please remember that I need your support to keep this channel going. You can click the join button below and you'll see weekly videos. You can also click on the $sign button and you can give money to any video you want. All of that helps. I need you to do that, because if you guys don't support the channel, I'm going to have to go get some other job just to function. I won't be able to do this. I want to continue to make this my full-time job, and the only way that happens is by your support. So go and subscribe at the thunderwizard.com website, or go to the shop and purchase something, and or give in the ways that I've said, like, you know, hit the $sign button or something like that. All of that means a lot. At the very least, please show up and do the interdimensional meditations, and share this with everybody you can. And if anything, please make sure that you communicate with higher dimensional beings and find out who you are in the higher dimensional realms. It's the most important thing you can do for everybody, including the world. And the solar flash event will be more easily tolerated. By the way, all the things that I teach will help your nervous system to absorb the higher dimensional energies. So go to thunderwizard.com and subscribe, and or purchase the practices and start doing them, so you can tolerate the changes as your nervous system absorbs them. With that, my friends, I'm going to shut up. I appreciate you putting all the time into this and watching this. And I love you all. Again, as I've said to you before, you're the most important being. There is no being more important than you. The universe was created solely for your and only your satisfaction and your happiness and your joy. And I wouldn't exist if it weren't for you. If you didn't create me, I wouldn't exist. And so I thank you and I honor you. And when you live your life based on your greatest happiness, the most powerful gods, including Shiva himself, will bow before you and worship you for giving him life. And I also do that as well. Thank you so much. I wish you all the best, and I look forward to seeing you very soon. And as we continue to shift up together, thank you so much. See you all later.